Hello, this is Pick, and this is a tutorial for automating the cooking plate in Integration by Parts DX presented by FTB. The cooking plate comes in two forms, the cool and the hot form. Naturally, the hot form is hot and the cool form is cool, though it doesn't affect the player in any way. To obtain a hot cooking plate, you'll need to craft a cold one and smelt it in a furnace. However, that can be a bit cumbersome, and while it is possible to do it, there's another way too. It's relatively inexpensive and works forever with no fuel, but you will need to make some magic progress, particularly in astral sorcery, to obtain it. For the heating component of the plate, you'll just need a collector crystal of any type, a crystal lens, and an ignition lens to place in it. Right-click the crystal lens with the ignition lens to place the ignition lens in. Then place down your collector crystal and take a linking tool and right-click the crystal to the lens to connect them together. Then, right-click on the crystal lens and connect it to the cold cooking plate. It will automatically smelt into the hot cooking plate, the rate being dependent on the time of day. Since this is going to produce a fluid in the world, I'm going to want to contain it somehow, just by placing some blocks around the top of the cooking plate. This can be done both manually and automatically, but obviously this is a tutorial for automation. For the various components, you can use fresh water, fresh milk, cooking oil, or a glass bottle to produce its respective fluid. The glass bottle is supposed to be a stand-in for cooking in air, so that's why the bottle doesn't get consumed. However, I'm going to start over and make a new setup. The number of components you'll need is fairly small. All of these items are from Cyclic. You'll want an item user, a number of precise droppers equal to the number of items in the recipe, and a redstone clock, and some redstone dust and some other little bits. And I'll be using a vacuumulator from Thermal, which I can filter to collect the items. So I guess it's not all from Cyclic, but you get the point. Low material cost. All of these Cyclic machines require power, of course, so I'll be using some creative cells for demonstrative purposes. Of course, you're going to be hooking it up to your main power network or something. All of these Cyclic machines require power, of course, so I'll be using some creative cells for demonstrative purposes. Of course, you're going to be hooking it up to your main power network or something. Here you can see the item user placing the fluid above the cooking plate. Of course, this cools the cooking plate down if you don't have the crystal feeding it constant thermal energy. Precision droppers have three separate categories for what you can configure with them. The first one is count. This determines how many items the dropper outputs at a given time. Of course, this will depend on how many items are inside of it as well. The second one is the offset. This is important when you have them stacked in a row like this. It'll determine how far away the dropper will place the item. This means that you can have multiple in a line and they'll all place into the same block spot. The third one is the delay. This determines how much of a redstone pulse it needs until it outputs items again. If the delay is set to 10, it'll wait 10 ticks, so if you have a signal going for 20 ticks, it'll place twice within that interval. I would recommend only having it operate once in a given interval based on what you set your redstone clock to. That brings us to the redstone clock itself. It has three settings of its own, as well as an input to determine whether it's on or off if it gets a redstone signal. But for the sake of this, we're just going to go through each of the options in the GUI. The duration determines how long the signal is going to last. This means that if you have it set to 60 ticks, it'll be on for 3 seconds. Then we have the delay. The delay is the distance between times it makes pulses. This is not to be confused with the delay on the machines, which effectively you want to scale with the duration rather than the delay on the clock. And finally, there's the power. Just leave this at 15 unless you have a reason to change it. This is the strength of the redstone signal. In general, your duration should match the delay on the user and each of the droppers. This will keep them synchronized. I would also make sure that you have a fairly high delay set on the clock so that it doesn't craft things very quickly in case the cooking plate isn't heating up fast enough. You could go as low tech as a ender hopper on a drawer, but I'm going to use the vacuumulator. Simply put it down and put a filter in it, and then you'll need to set the filter for the product you want to take. If you don't filter it, it'll start picking up all the ingredients as well, which of course you don't want. Since I did mess it up a bit, I'm just going to say the final status of each of these components. So for the item user, it has a delay of 20 ticks. This is 1 second. Then, sequentially, each of the precise droppers has an offset increasing with how far away it is from the endpoint. That's a 0 for the one closest, then a 1, then a 2. Each of them has a delay of 20, like the item user. The clock has a delay of 200 ticks. This is 10 seconds. You can adjust it as you see fit. It has a duration of 20 ticks, which is equal to the delay on the users and the droppers. And finally, the vacuumulator is whitelisted to only accept carrot bread as its filtered input. Of course, you'll need some logistics to make sure all of these are stocked constantly, but that's what farms are for, and you can probably figure those out yourselves if you're playing a pack like this. Thanks for watching, I hope this was clear, and if you have a question, leave it in the comments. So, this has been Pick, I'm glad to have seen you, and I hope to see you again.